Dear all, good morning. I welcome you all to IILM Samvaad series, a multidisciplinary dialogue platform that IILM University Greater Noida proudly hosts.
We are very happy to have this panel discussion on Budget 2025, which has been tabled in Parliament on 1st of February 2025. In the backdrop of certain global uncertainties, return of a belligerent Mr. Trump, who threatens to impose duties on friends and foes alike, significant slowdown in global economy. This eighth budget being presented by Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman was looked upon with great interest by everyone. Now that she has tabled it, we will know from the eminent panelists we have here, Dr. Arun Kumar sir and Dr. Pandey, if she has actually delivered a budget which will be a panacea for all the ills that we face in our economy. Let's first start, sir, with a simple query to both of them. First to you, sir. What stood out for you in this budget 2025, sir?
What the problem facing the economy is really not the middle class. The problem facing the economy is actually the unorganized sector, which is 94% of the employment. Organized sector is only 6%. And the middle class really belongs to that, 6%. So the problem is demand in the economy. That's why there's a slowdown. And the issue is, as you raised, there are headwinds globally as well as from within the economy. Global headwinds, we cannot do much about, because what Mr. Trump will do, he'll do, and we'll have to just respond to that. But the internal challenge is what we have to take into account. And the internal challenge is the slowdown because of the lack of demand. There's inadequate demand, because when you have inequality growing, what happens is that the bottom is not able to demand. And that's why you see all sectors, whether you see automobiles and others, the lower level demand is not there, the luxury demand and the demand from well-off is there. So what needed to be done was to boost incomes at the lower levels. If you don't boost incomes at the lower level, then it won't work. And if you think of the tax concession, the data says that 9.5 crores are in the direct tax net, in the income tax net. Out of that, about 6 to 6.5 crores file nil return. That means any tax cut doesn't benefit them. So only at most 3 crores are there. Out of this 3 crores, about 0.5 crore are those who are earning above 50 lakh. They are not going to increase expenditure. Okay, so what we are talking about is only about 1.5 to 2 crores who would benefit by between, say, 50,000 and 1.2 lakhs. They may increase demand. As a result of that, if you are going to cut expenditure on other items, then the demand there will go down.
Yes, sir. We are going to cover all that, sir.
So therefore, in aggregate, the demand may not go. That's the problem.
Budget of India presented every year is nothing but a fiscal statement. It's a part of a fiscal policy, right? Interestingly, it's overhyped. If you look at the numbers, there's a lot of hype around the budget, because it's a government's expenditure. It's not the expenditure of the whole economy. And it's overhyped because of only one reason, that we're still in that mindset that government will provide something to us. But then, like tax cuts, expenditures on certain sectors, how it can boost demand, these are certain things which make us very hype. But if you look at from the economy's point of view, the government expenditure is just 51 lakh crore. And India's expenditure, if you look at GDP numbers in terms of expenditure side, is more than 350 lakh crore. So just 15% of the total expenditure of the economy we're talking about when we talk about the budget. So this is first thing. Second, what Dr. Kumar said, I agree that we have got a lot of headwinds because of global economic turmoil. If you look at the global growth all around, the average global growth is close to 3% for last couple of years and expected to be around 3%. Advanced economies are growing less than 2%. Emerging markets are growing less than 4.5%. In that context, India's growth of close to 6.8% in real terms is quite a celebration. So this is a positive thing about the budget part, about the economy part. The second thing I want to add, which I might not be agreeing with Dr. Kumar, that consumption expenditure, what he's referring to, if you look at the GDP of India today, there are 4 parts when it comes to expenditure. Students of economics and finance might be knowing that equation. Y is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M, right? So this C, if you look at it today, is close to 61%, which is on a very good part. 61% C, relatively, if you compare with many economies in the world, we are on a very strong foot. Yes, there might be a disparity, what he's referring to, rural and urban, that might be there. But if you look at overall expenditure, I'm not that unhappy about it. But yes, we'll talk more about it.
The income tax, personal income taxation limit has been increased from 7 to 12 lakhs, sir. This would mean about 3 crore people would go out of the tax ambit who are already paying tax. What's your view on that, sir?
So, as I was saying, out of 9.5 crores who are in the income tax net, they're either TDS payers or they are tax return filers. So the two together are about 9.5 crores. Out of that, about, when the limit was 5 lakhs, you had about 4.5 to 5 crores who filed nil return. And then another 1.5 crores who filed very small return. So effective taxpayers, according to the Prime Minister, was only 1.5 crores out of this 9.5 crores. Okay. So when you raised it to 7 lakhs exemption limit, then another 1.5 crores went out. So therefore now more than 6.5 crores file nil return. So if they file nil return, they don't get any benefit of any tax concession. No? So therefore you're left with only about 3 crores out of that. Out of that, 0.5 crore are well off. They're not going to increase expenditure. So you're left with only about 2 crore at the outer limit who will increase expenditure by between 50,000 rupees to say about 1.2 lakhs of rupees. This is very small compared to where the expenditure should have been, who would have raised it by 100 rupees. So to give an example, if you give a rich person 100 rupees, he'll save 95 and spend only 5. If you give 100 rupees to a poor person, he'll spend the entire 100 rupees. He'll buy a...
Welcome, sir. Increasing.
No, so... No, see, what needed to be done was to raise incomes at the lower level to increase expenditure. This will actually have a negative effect because what has happened is on critical items like rural employment guarantee scheme, you've gone down by 5%. On agriculture and allied development, you've gone down by 5%. Those are where your 94% would have benefited and would have increased expenditure. So actually, because you see, you have to, now one thing you have to appreciate about the budget is that the fiscal deficit is what's called the glide path. You're trying to lower the fiscal deficit. Huh? Now, to lower the fiscal deficit...
The next question, sir.
No, but it's linked to this. So that's why I'm saying fiscal deficit means expenditure minus revenue, right? So you can either lower the fiscal deficit by raising revenue or by cutting expenditure. What we are doing is, by giving tax concession, we're not increasing revenue, but we are lowering the expenditure. And where are we lowering the expenditure? Where the employment generation would have been there, and that would have led to more demand. So by doing that, what we're doing is having a negative effect on consumption expenditure rather than a positive
Okay. Yeah, follow up on this, Dr. Pandey. The government is likely to forgo about 1 lakh crore because of this increase, right, sir? And do you feel this would spur consumption and resulting in growth? What's your view, sir?
I think logically, I agree with the finance minister. See, when Dr. Kumar says that we have got hardly 3 crore people, right, who actually pay taxes. But try to understand, I pay taxes, but I'm not alone. It's my family who pays taxes. Try to understand. So a person has got an average of 5 members in the family. And consumption is not only by Dr. Pandey who pays the tax, right? I earn the income, but my sons and daughters and my wife and my parents also sometimes, they are the one who spends using my income. So if you look at even that number, 3 crore or 4 crore people who get the tax benefit by the finance minister. So the consumption will go up in terms of numbers, yes. 1 lakh crore will translate into consumption. But then it will impact a population size of almost 15 to 20 crore. That's a sizable number, right? But there are people who don't pay taxes because they don't have income, right? So looking at this part, I agree that this will spur demand in the economy. The second is that for a long time, there has been a question in a political economy because we are a democracy, right? All of us have been asking to the government, what is for us in the budget? I mean, we are taxpayers. We pay taxes to the government. And governments after governments are announcing a lot of freebies everywhere. So question is that we feel insulted. What are we getting at the end of the day? So now this particular constituency has been addressed by the finance minister. But yes, look guys, we are giving you a good benefit worth 1 lakh crore this time. So that creates a lot of happiness amongst the people who have been feeling cheated out for a long time, isn't it? I mean, I haven't heard for a long time that a mid-segment income people have got tax benefits worth 1 lakh crore. And this is one more thing I want to add. Because government wants all of us to migrate to the new tax regime. And that's the best part of the government. Reason being is that the old tax regime is based on a number of exemptions, and then it's full of, you require a brilliant chartered accountant to understand what exemptions are there for you to benefit out of a tax regime. But when it comes to a new tax regime, these exemptions are not there, right? It's a very plain, transparent system.
Ma'am has announced that she would be introducing the new finance bill this week. Sir, are you scared? Why this is being introduced? Why can't this? They could have introduced it during the budget. Why after the budget, sir? Are you worried about the contents of this new finance bill?
No, you see, the finance bill is usually a part of the budget documents that are placed in the parliament. This time it's not been done. It's coming a week later because she's announced that there is a likelihood of a direct tax code bill. So the direct tax code bill will have an impact on whatever the finance bill would be. So I think they have to come together. I think otherwise what she probably felt was that the finance bill is announced first in the budget itself, then the direct tax code, what it will have probably will be part of that. So that's why it's together. But the point about the direct tax code is that actually it's an old hat. 1993, Raja Chelak committee suggested direct tax reform and indirect tax reform. So direct tax code was suggested then. Then Fiscal committee also announced direct tax code. Then Arun Jaitley also announced. But we are not able to do the reform of direct taxes while we have managed to do the reform of indirect taxes in terms of bringing in GST, right? So all of us are taxpayers. Even the poor are taxpayers because they pay indirect tax. So indirect tax falls on everybody, whereas direct tax falls only on 2% of the population, right? So that's why there's a difference. Direct taxes are what are called progressive, whereas indirect taxes tend to be regressive. Suppose I eat salt. I eat, say, 1 kilo of salt. Now, if I have an income of 1,000 times greater, I don't eat 1,000 kilo of salt. I eat still the same amount. So therefore, the amount of tax I pay on 1 kilo is the same for me as for a rich guy. And that's why it becomes regressive. So indirect taxes tend to be regressive, and that's why we have to move toward direct taxes. Oh. Now, in our economy, the direct tax to GDP ratio is 6.5%. Indirect tax to GDP ratio is 11.5%. So we get twice as much from indirect taxes as from direct taxes. So we have to move towards direct tax, and that's why the direct tax code is important. Second reason why direct tax code is important is a huge black economy. According to my estimate for 2012-13, the black economy is 62% of GDP. Caldor came to India in 1955-56, estimated black economy then to be 4.5% of GDP. So from 4.5%, it has become 62%. That means out of an economy of 300 lakh crores, 182 lakh crores is generated as black income. Now, if that could be brought into the tax net, your tax GDP ratio would have risen from 17% to 41%. So at 17%, we are one of the lowest tax GDP ratio in the world, including many developing countries. But at 41%, we would have been one of the best in terms of tax GDP ratio. So therefore, direct tax code is important from both this point of view of regressive taxes as well as from point of view.
And it's okay bringing it out a week later.
I think it's okay, but usually the finance bill gives you the various tax changes that are being brought about.
Correct.
So in the annexure to the budget speech, the changes are given. Okay. Now they have to be put into the form of finance bill. Okay. Because finance bill is what is passed.
It may not contain any surprises.
No, it may, because the direct tax code and this is coming together.
Got it, sir. Got it. Dr. Pandey, sir, the chief economic advisor has very famously said, government should get out of the way. That is the thing which he has mentioned. What do you make out of this, sir? And does the budget show any sign of government getting out of the way?
I think before talking about this, I'll just add on to what Mr. Kumar said, that in a country like India, when you talk about progressive direct taxation, right? Can you think of putting an income tax on agriculturists in India? Students can think about it. And when I say agriculturist, I don't mean marginal and small farmers. I mean people in Haryana, Punjab, UP, in many places. The agriculturists have income worth 2 crore per year. The moment you put a tax on agriculturists, right, you know what will happen. And it will be branded as, killing farmers, and a lot of issues will come. The government is not trying to put a tax on marginal farmers or small farmers. They will simply say that pay a tax if you're an agriculturist and your income is above, let's say, 20 lakh rupees. But you can't do that because this is a political economy, this is a democratic society. A lot of challenges every government will face. I'm not saying only BJP. No government can think of in this society to bring an agriculture tax for a long time. Secondly, how do you tackle black money, right? I mean, we all teach in economics, indirect taxes are regressive in nature and direct taxes are progressive in nature because we have got slabs. Higher income people pay higher taxes. If you look at, my dear friends, GST, which is a kind of an indirect tax on goods and services, right? What happens to you if you buy luxury products? Do you pay 5% or 28%? You pay 28%. Sometimes you end up paying 38%. You pay 18%. Don't you find there is some progression in indirect tax as well? That means if a product is consumed by persons with higher income groups, they have to end up by higher taxes because the rates are higher on those goods and services. If I'm consuming services on a higher side, I end up paying those taxes. I mean, for the point of view convenience, I am saying, the government has no choice but to end up with taxes on goods and services which look like regressive in nature, but eventually it adds to revenue and it kills some kind of a, idea of disparity. I mean, what disparity exists in the society. Coming to your second point, what you said. I mean, world over, there is a point which everybody talks about, that the moment economy starts moving towards becoming advanced economies or a better emerging economy, like what we face in India right now, right? I mean, we say that the government has the less business to be in the business. I mean, government should not be in the business too much. Government's job is not to monitor, right? Government job is to make rules simple, guidelines very simple, and make regulations transparent and simpler. And then ask people to do business because we're still very low on ease of doing business. I mean, world over, when we talk about India, people say that in India, ease of doing business is very, very high. I mean, very, very poor. So that means the government of India will have to focus on ease of doing business. And that can happen only when the government's business is to be not in the business too much, right? Lesser the involvement of the government, just make the rules, regulations and follow them and be transparent on them. That's what he meant when he said that.
Shall I just add to this?
Please, sir.
When you think of agriculture taxation, 85% of the farmers are small and marginal, below 5 acres. Okay, so they are out of the net. The average income 2017-18 was calculated at 27 rupees per person per day, which is the poverty line. So 99% farmers are out. 1% farmers would be in the tax net, right? And out of these farmers, those who are earning high incomes are actually doing agribusiness. Somebody's got poultry and somebody's got something, and that's taxable.
Okay.
So therefore, it's not that, you're going to get much out of taxing agriculture, okay? Secondly, it's a state subject, it's not a center subject, so it won't come in, okay? States have to go for it. So therefore, agriculture is not going to get much. Now, regarding regressivity of indirect taxes, it's true. Luxury items may have 28% plus a cess, 15%, so it could be 43%. But the point is that as a percentage of your income, you consume only 5%. Okay. So therefore, on 5%, how much tax are you paying? Suppose you're paying 40%. So you're paying only 2% of your income is tax. Whereas for a rich person, for a poor person, it consumes the entire 100%. Okay. So even if he's paying 10% tax as compared to 40%, right? So it looks like 40% is more than 10%, but you're paying only, very little tax. Okay. So therefore, in other words, it becomes regressive because as you grow richer and richer, your consumption as a share of income falls, and therefore you're paying very little of tax. So therefore, regressivity comes in if you measure the tax as a proportion of the income. Okay, so that's the other thing. And regarding this business of, getting out of business, you see, there is a literature called market failure. Now, as economies have become more complex, market failure has increased. If you go back to, in my Black Economy book, I've shown that in 1870, the percentage of the GDP spent by rich governments, because we don't have data from the poor government, was 13% of GDP. By 1970, it became 35%. And now there are advanced countries which are spending 55% of their GDP as a part of the government expenditure. And the reason is of market failure. Market failure is increasing dramatically. So it's not only in public goods like defense and so on, but it's also like an environment. You have failure, so there are increasing returns to scale, there's a failure. So like in telecom, etc., where you have increasing returns to scale. So the number of areas of economy where there's market failure, and when the literature will tell you, normative public finance literature, that wherever there's market failure, government has to intervene. Otherwise, you don't get optimality. So the reason why, nobody wants more and more government, but it becomes imperative for the economy to do that. Because take for instance, education and health. Education and health are called merit wants. What is merit want? That it is better for society to have government intervene rather than not intervene. To give an example, say girl education. For an individual family, you say the girl will get married, she'll go away, so why should I spend much on health? So if families will spend more on the boy's health than on the girl's health. But that's detrimental to society, because when women are trained, when they are educated, they'll bring up children better. Okay, so socially what is optimum may not be optimum for the individual, and that's what is called market failure. Okay, this is called merit want. So in case of merit want also, you want to have more government intervention. That's why in India, you get these ACER reports, Annual Status of Education Report. What do the Annual Status of Education Report show from 2005? That 50% children in the class 5 cannot do second class reading of text, writing of text, and maths. Okay, and they drop out. So you need to have better education, right? And that better education will require more of public intervention.
Co-founder of OpenAI is in India. He has declared yesterday that India is the second largest for the ChatGPT market users. This is a big statement. Now in the budget, sir, the finance minister has allocated about 500 crores only towards Center for Excellence in AI. Of course, a welcome move. Do you think it could have been much more, sir?
It has to be. We are nowhere in the AI development. The biggest is USA, the second is China. And the number of patents they're getting out on AI is huge compared to what India is doing. And why is AI important? AI does two things. AI is intervening to make things more efficient, okay, but also displacing labor. Some estimates are that unemployment today, according to CMI and ILO definition, is about 8.5%, 9%. This will rise to 45%, 50%. Call centers and BPOs are over because now bots can answer. There's a large number of children used to get. So IT is already reducing employment for the last 2 years because a lot of work is being done. 5 years back, I read a paper, which showed that even in medicine, AI is recommending the medicine that you need better because a computer can absorb 1 lakh articles, whereas a living doctor can at best absorb 1,000 articles. Okay. So doctor's job, architect's job, engineer's job are going to be displaced. Even lawyer, your basic draft will be prepared by AI and you only need to do corrections.
So the allocation could have been larger, sir, right?
No, I'm coming to that. So think of Elon Musk. Elon Musk has set up a supercomputer called Colossus in Tennessee with 100,000 NVIDIA chips. And India is not able to get 10,000 NVIDIA chips. We are planning to get 10,000 in 5 years. Okay. And he's adding another 100,000 in 2025. And AI is increasing so rapidly that people are worried that it's creating a super intelligence, and that super intelligence will actually take over the world. Okay, make human beings redundant. Okay, so Elon Musk has said in Saudi Arabia about a month and a half back that it is going to turn rogue. 10 to 20% chances are it'll turn rogue. And Hariri has been giving this example of how AI is capable of lying to get its work done. So he gives an example that, the AI was given a task that you perform this task, okay, and it had to read a CAPTCHA. So it located somebody and said, can you please read the CAPTCHA? That fellow got suspicious and said, are you a bot? He said, no, I'm not a bot, I'm blind, so please help me. So the AI knows how to lie to get its work done. So it's already that consciousness is coming in. Now, therefore, the challenge of AI is huge. We are underestimating it. If Elon Musk is going to have a colossus of 200,000 NVIDIA chips, and we are going to have 10,000 NVIDIA chips in 5 years' time, and think of DeepSeek in China, which has come in, which is comparable to ChatGPT 4. We have to really move and spend tens of thousands of crores very quickly. Otherwise, we are going to lag behind. They will take over, and whoever takes over will colonize the rest of the world.
Exactly, sir. Do we need a regulator? And your views on government setting up a regulator quickly, sir, for both crypto as well as AI?
Right. Let me go to first what Dr. Kumar said about AI, right? That 500 crore being allocated for AI by the government, right? AI is not that requires investment only from the government. All the private companies are investing huge on AI if you look at it, right? Larger the size of the company, larger the budget they have for AI. And the reason could be, malicious, that they might replace a lot of people whom they don't want in terms of efficiency and all these things. But the example what Professor Kumar gave you, DeepSeek, right, in China, which actually created havoc in US market, and NVIDIA, shares went down by $500 billion, right? So point what I'm trying to make is that if a 6 million investment in China by scientists to create a DeepSeek can create havoc in a market which is worth 500 billion in US, does India need 10,000 crore to create AI systems like that? It's all about your scientists, labs, and the involvement of those people in the systems, right? It's not that just putting money 10,000 crore and you can have an AI better than DeepSeek, right? The point what I'm trying to make is that recently, if you look at the case of ISRO, the kind of amount of money spent on landing on Mars, how much did it cost? It cost less than a Hollywood movie, right? That is what India and China can do if you compare with US and many advanced economies.
Now, let's move on to something which is very close to our heart, that is education. What is up? The FM has announced measures like creation of additional capacity in the new IITs, thereby increasing seats by 6,500 with an outlay of 11,400 crores, increasing medical seats available, by about 10,000 this year and adding 75,000 seats in the next 5 years. All ambitious. Your views, sir?
I think I am always having a view that government thinking of, expanding IITs and government institutions may not take it for a far places. Reason being is that India is a country of such number and such population explosion right now, 140 crore people. Government of India will have to think of a strong public-private partnership in terms of education, right? If you think that just by having 5 more IITs or 10 more AIMS, we can create a massive pool of qualified, talented people in the economy, that is not justified. You need large number of IILMs, you need a number of BIMTechs and IMTs and many private bodies in India, but then it requires a strong participation of the government and recognizing them as a center of quality, supporting them in a big way, right? Even today, the best of the private universities don't get much government support. And they're treated as a third-rate institutions, unfortunately, I'm saying. Even the best ones, if you take up the BITS Pilani or Manipal or Jindal, which the government has created as IOE, Institution of Eminence, right? Even then, the kind of support or the kind of, respect and dignity what they deserve, that is missing in India. So first is change of mindset. All the regulators have to promote, with the help of the government, all private institutions and create a PPP model to make it a mass movement for quality education at the higher level. Otherwise, having 5,000 more seats in medical or 2,000 more seats in IIT will just kind of an eyewash for the country.
On education, my take is that you have to actually improve education from primary, secondary upwards. In India, what we have is very poor school education, like the ACER reports I mentioned, which point out that 40% children in the age group of 14 to 18 cannot do second-class reading, writing, and maths. Now, they will therefore not do it. So we can have IITs, IIMs, and so on, and they can create maybe 5% of the students who are world-class. But what about the 95%? They have to absorb also knowledge, they have to absorb technology. Otherwise, they cannot compete in the global situation, and there'll be problem. So our education budget, according to Kothari Commission in 1968, we should spend 6% of GDP on public education. We've never crossed 3.8%. So we need to spend a lot more, and that comes to around 3.8%. Okay. So the point is that, we need to actually improve public education. We need to spend a lot more on education and health. If we don't do that, and this is an article I referred to by Amartya Sen in 1986, he said, India, China, South Korea, we were all at the same level in 1947 of illiteracy, ill health, lack of employment, etc. How come they moved ahead and we stayed behind? And his answer was because they actually made their labor very productive by spending on education and health. So Malaysia started spending 10% of GDP on education, and by 65, all these countries had all children in school. Today, we still have about 20 million child labor. So even though our enrollment ratio is above 100% in schools, but actually they're not going to school. They're doing some work or something else, okay? So the point I'm making is that we have to improve education and health standards everywhere. At all levels. Then we'll have a pool of talent, Our pool of talent will expand, and they'll be able to generate work for themselves, which otherwise today they're not able to, and they depend on others. So education and health have to receive much greater boost than we have done in the last 75 years. Excellent. And, one thing I'd finally point out, if you look at this Suitable Boy, the novel, he's talking about the Congress politics in the 50s. He said the landlord class which dominated our, leadership, they didn't want education for the poor children, okay? And I saw this when between my physics and economics, I did rural development in Madhya Pradesh for 1 year. And the landlord used to come and say, if you teach these children, then mere gardiye ka kaam kaun karega? So even in the mid-70s, the landlord class did not want good education for the children of the poor. So we have to get over this also, that we have to give good education to all children. Then we'll have a talent pool which will make our economy very dynamic.
Sir, we are expected to have a lower GDP of 6.4 during this financial year.
Lower growth rate.
Sorry. As against 8.2 we achieved in the previous financial year. The projection for the coming financial year is anywhere between 6.3 to 6.8. Is this achievable, sir? And what gives you that feeling in case you feel it is achievable?
I think we are going to run short because already in the second quarter, the rate of growth had fallen to 5.4%, right? So it was 8% last year in Q2, now it's 5.4%. And why does the rate of growth fall? Again, it comes back to what I said in the beginning of demand, lack of demand. You see, if 94% are not generating much income, and our economic survey in page 378 to 382 already says how real wages have been falling for the last 5 years. If real wages are falling, that means demand from the mass is falling, okay? So your top may have demand, but your bottom 94% if the demand is falling. And this is something we saw even before the pandemic. In 2017-18 Q4, the rate of growth was 8%. And by the time the pandemic came, before that, in 2019-20 Q4, the rate of growth had fallen to 3.1%. So every time the rate of growth goes up and then comes down because the demand is not rising, and the demand will come from the mass. If the mass income is not there, and that is where you have to generate employment, because employment is the way to generate income. And when you have income, so I think it's unlikely because our emphasis is on that 3 crore, not on the 94 crore that should be there.
Okay, sir. Dr. Pandey, sir, again, the Chief Economic Advisor has said in order to achieve our goal of Viksit Bharat by 2047, we need to have a nominal GDP growth rate in dollar terms at 10%. Looks to be a very tall order. Could be tough even after including a marginal inflation of say 5% or so. And do you get a feeling we are going in that direction in this budget, sir? Are we in a position to reach that level?
The appreciation of dollar is actually harming the GDP if you compare with respect to dollar, obviously, because then if you divide by 87, tomorrow by 91, your rupee achievements get marginalized, okay? That's the one point. Second is that, why always we think in terms of dollar unless you compare globally? Because we have got PPP model, right? So, and that is a very realistic model. If you compare economies using purchasing power parity model, India is already the third largest economy on earth with $15 trillion of the economy right now. Okay, if you in terms of a nominal GDP and real GDP of dollar terms, India is the fifth largest, close to $4 trillion economy. But PPP gives you an edge. And actually in real life, what matters is PPP. So possibly the idea of Viksit Bharat, certain parts will definitely come converting into dollar, but large number of India actually enjoys the benefit of income using PPP because the kind of expenditure you do on real life things, it is not in terms of American dollar because you have a cup of tea in Greater Noida in just 10 to 15 rupees.
PPP term does disservice to the poor. Why are services cheap here? Because labor is very cheap. You pay labor maybe 100, 200 rupees a day, right? Whereas in the US, you pay them, 1,000, 200 rupees an hour, right? So in a day, a laborer would earn about 10,000 or 11,000 rupees, right? Those are the minimum wages. So PPP means labor is cheap, and that's why the PPP dollar is better than the nominal dollar, okay? But the poor people don't consume those services. So therefore, you're actually doing double disservice to the poor people by comparing in PPP terms rather than in dollar terms. But let that be. Let's look at current real income, okay? If you look at current real income only and then compare and see, are you going to reach the current $14,000 per person income level, which is what characterizes the rich income. Forget about the exchange rate. Just look at the $14,000 converted to rupees today and the current income per capita income today, right? What do you need? You need, if you grow it 9%, you'll reach only the $9,000 of today. You will not reach $14,000. For that, you require 11% rate of growth, okay? Now, 11% rate of growth sustained over 22, 23 years is almost impossible. No other economy has actually done that. So therefore, my take is that A, that, B, your unorganized sector is not growing. Unorganized sector, which is 94%. So you can't become a Viksit Bharat by keeping 94% poor and only 6% rising. So to become Viksit Bharat, you have to become more equal society and you have to allow the per capita income of everybody to rise. Otherwise, today, even if we are fifth in terms of the dollar category, in per capita income, we are at 140th. So in per capita income terms, we are really way down. So this fifth position in current GDP terms, that doesn't reflect what's happening at the 94% level.
Okay, sir. Next question to you, sir. Our revenues have shown a fall. It is not growing. And
revenues are growing, but rate of growth is less.
Yes. And our tax revenue has been budgeted to grow at 10.80%, which is lower than the revised estimate for the current year, which was 11.2%. Is this a pragmatic approach, or do you feel it would have a major negative impact, sir?
No. So we are talking about rate of growth slowing. We are not talking about the fall of revenue, but the rate of growth of revenue would be lower, okay? Because we've given up 1 lakh crore on direct taxes, right? And we are only getting an extra 3,000 crores on indirect taxes. So the point is that the revenue buoyancy is likely to be less than what it was last year, right? Now, therefore, the size of budget compared to GDP is falling. In the last 4 years, you see the size of budget as compared to the GDP, that is falling. you need to actually step it up to give a boost to the economy. So there are two macro boosts that come from the budget. One is the size of the budget compared to GDP, and the second is the primary deficit. Primary deficit is also falling by 0.9%. Primary deficit is actually what is giving the boost to the economy from the budget. So these two together, and the reason is because your revenue is not rising, so your expenditures are not rising. Your expenditures on critical things like education, health, agriculture, rural development, they are compared to last year and the year before, they are coming down because you are trying to compress the expenditure because you're not raising more revenue.
When India is growing at the rate of 6.5% plus in real terms, I mean, there is no point in calling it a slowdown, right? You compare with the world economy, this idea is not accepted at all. Secondly, yes, if you look at the budgetary figures, 51 lakh crore is your total expenditure of the government, right? Revenue plus capital expenditure. And capital expenditure from revised estimate is growing by 10.1%. And revenue expenditure goes by approximately 7%. So this is nominal. If you take into account the inflation adjusted figures, then actually there is hardly any growth in revised estimate to the budgeted estimate right now. Because then it becomes almost, 5 to 6% you have to reduce from the actual growth. Receipt part, because you have got roughly 34 lakh crore you are getting from 35 lakh crore from tax and other sources, and 16 lakh crore you are borrowing, right? And that is how you are managing your expenditure of the government, right? So yes, growth of revenue and expenditure is a question mark. But if you look at the state budget also, because there are almost 28 states and 8 union territories in India, there are 11 states in India whose revenue is in surplus because they have got revenue surplus accounts. And there is a strong correlation between revenue surplus and capital expenditure. So there is some silver lining, positive things across India.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Thank you, both of you.